Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us here on INC Live. Back by popular demand, it is time for the UFC 316 preview show. My name is Karl, Bainbridge, holding the fort for this evening. Now, normally, I would be joined by my regular guest host, Joe Neal. Joe, however, is a little bit under the weather, but I have been happy to be joined by the man here on my right. So please give a big INC welcome to Rob Nakamura. Rob, thank you for joining us on short notice.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, man. I really appreciate the invitation and short notice, baby. You know, that's what us Hawaiians do. Shout out Danny Ige.
Certainly so, 50k Ige. And being Brit, of course, you can see on the background there, Michael Bisping, of course, he knows a thing or two about short notice fights and making the most of it.
That's right. That's what we're here to do. Make the most of it, enjoy it, and move the sport forward with enthusiasm.
So there are going to be a lot of people, Rob, who might not be aware of your work. Obviously, you're new to the channel. So for anybody who wants to know a bit about you, could you tell us a little bit about your background and why you're the best man to fill the void?
Well, my man, I just want to say thank you to you and to a few other people who threw my name around. My story is ancient. I'm one of the few last standing day one fans of the sport. I was lucky enough to be introduced to the sport as an 8-year-old kid, November 12th, 1993, with my two grandparents. Accidentally bought the pay-per-view thinking it was a wrestling thing for me as a young boy, and ended up being a turning point the rest of my life. Grew up in Hawaii, so during the dark ages of the sport, when Senator McCain was trying to close the UFC down, Hawaii was one of the 4 sports that kept it alive. So, man, it's infused in me. I mean, just recently, the great Vitor Belfort was put into the Hall of Fame. I seen his pro debut live. So if you can see, this sport is part of who I am through and through. My 2 closest cousins fought professionally in MMA. I live in Vegas now, arguably the mecca of the sport. And there's so many other connections to the sport throughout the years and interactions that it's literally just part of who I am. So that's me in a nutshell. Been doing media and content in the MMA media space for around 5 years. Interviewed everybody from debuting amateurs to current and former world champions. So there you go. That's me in a nutshell, man.
So I think you're going to be the perfect man to talk about this upcoming fight card. UFC 316 will be taking place this Saturday. And I think it comes at a time as well, Rob, where I think the sport, the UFC especially, but I think the entire sport of mixed martial arts, it's not in a very healthy place. Obviously, we had the saga recently with Macy Barber having to be forced out of her main event. And it comes at a time where I think fans are a bit disillusioned with a lot of rematches, which obviously UFC 316 we're going to talk about a lot. I don't think fans have been too infused with some of the main events that have been happening. The Apex, of course, has been at the top end of everybody's complaint lists. Is UFC 316 the card that's going to quell some of those critics?
No. And unfortunately, these critics of the sport and the environment of the sport, unfortunately to me, in my opinion, majority of them are relatively new. Some of us call them COVID era fans. And I don't really think they fully understand the operating system of the game. And I've been fortunate enough, I'm old now, that I've seen the sport evolve and change and have this type of resistance at every step of the way. This is just the growing pains of this era. And I really feel like sometimes these fans of the modern era are spoiled. They're spoiled with so many fights, so much opportunity to watch fighting. I mean, there was months and months gaps when I started my love affair with the sport. So there's just points of views on it. The other thing I think that is real, and I think a sticking point that is causing some of this, that I think where the focus should go, is the broken ranking system. Like, I just want to get straight into the issue. Like, forget the opinions. Like, the broken ranking system is messing stuff up, man. It's forcing these awkward rematches. Nobody wants to fight below them. It's themselves on their own rankings, and it's just creating a cluster jam unnecessarily. I do think this fight, though, this 316 fight, is maybe a pivot point of enthusiasm, because everyone's looking forward to next month's cards with a lot of enthusiasm. There's 4 bangers on paper, as people like to say. So I hope people attach to this one and get the more positive feelings going again, for sure.
And we're going to try and keep that positivity going. We're going to be talking about the card in general. First off, we're going to be starting with the prelims. You can see those on your screen right now. Are there any fights you would say on the prelims that taking your fancy? What could people who are maybe tuning in for the first time, what would you recommend for them to look out for?
My man, I'm gonna be probably off in the weeds when I say this one. Initially, people are gonna go, "Why the hell did you pick this?" I'm going to the heavyweights. Sergey Spivak, Waldo Cortez Acosta, because because once again, back to the drama, back to the rankings, back to the backlog, right? There's so much attention to what John Jones doing, what Tom's gonna do, Mr. Aspinall's gonna do, this and that, and then there's all the rest of the athletes. There's literally all the rest of the heavyweights. So I'm glad to see some ranked fighters getting in the mix and doing the thing. And I'm hoping that they can just make a good show of it. And I'm hoping that both these guys understand that where they're at is like a 2-fight situation away from being a contender for the belt. So that's kind of where I think there's going to be some action as far as what it means to the athletes and what it means to the division. I think is one of the more impactful prelim fights in that regard.
I think it's going to be an interesting one to look at as well because obviously striker versus grappler. I mean that goes back to UFC 1, that whole premise. Spivak, in my opinion, is somebody who, when he's able to utilize his when he's on control, when he's the guy who's dictating the pace, some of his grappling can be wonderful to watch. I mean, you very seldom see grappling heavy. You very seldom see heavyweight fighters, I should say, who are that active off their back in the way that Spivak is. But he does crumble under adversity quite easily. So if Waldo is able to land that big overhand right, which he's more than capable of doing, we could have an interesting situation on our hands. I am favouring Spivak to win that one, but there's always that question mark when it comes to him.
I fully agreed. You nailed that breakdown, and I slightly favor Spivak in that one. But Waldo Cortez Acosta is not deaf. He's been hearing everybody talking. He might have an urge to prove something. And if I want to throw one more up there that I think, just because these two gentlemen have dealt with cancellation after rebooking after cancellation after rebooking, and they've somehow paired them together, Mr. Chaos Williams and Mr. Andreas Gustafsson, they've both those brothers have had multiple cancellations, and they've been trying to fix them left and right. And now they get together and party on this card. Shout out to both those guys to just doing the best with what they got, and hope they bring a banger.
Definitely so. In terms of some of the fights which I'm keeping a curious eye out for, Josh Van is wonderful fun. Probably one of the more entertaining flyweights on the roster. So he's going to be taking on Bruno Silva, who had a real war with Manel Kape, I think, in his last appearance. And you mentioned before, in sort of like your early monologue, about some of your issues with the rankings. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing you did, because one of the fights which is taking place on the Fight Pass portion of the card, we've got Wang Tong, who's going to be taking on Ariane De Silva. And this is a chance for Wang Tong, who has a lot of fanfare. The UFC seem to be really getting behind her. It's an opportunity for her to get into the rankings. However, it's also 7 months since she got beaten by Gabriela Fernandez. A big upset. It was on I think it was the Shanghai card that took place. And I don't know about you, I just find it very off that, yes, look, Wang got herself a victory against Bruna Brazil in between this fight and that fight. But I do find it a little bit uneasy that she's the one getting the ranking opportunity, while the girl who beat her is fighting Yulia Stoliarenko on like an Apex card.
I'm with that, and I don't know enough of the background stuff to answer this, but I was told by a couple of professionals, and it's a phrase that I think was borrowed and trickled down from Sean O'Malley. You fight to the level of your contract. Like if you're on that low or entry level contract still, the mid-tier contract, the second offering, why fight ranked people? Like, you're taking on a harder task for the less pay. Like when you're getting that money, okay, maybe do that challenge. There's a lot of moving parts as far as who gets to do what, but understand that like the rankings are so messed up that it's not even like a personal thing sometimes. Also, there's that element of what is the promotion trying to do? There's several fights on this card, this being one of them, where it seems like the promotion is trying to pass the baton. And what I mean by that is there's a name, a known entity, a quantity of Ariana Lipsky, now Miss De Silva, Mrs. De Silva, excuse me. She known quantity, but never really blossomed or hit the level that fans and people was hoping for, but she's known. And so now they want to move that, and hopefully in the promotion's mind, she takes an L past that Starlight over. And like I said, there's a couple matches that fit this model, and I think that's where that's why this is playing out the way it is.
So we're going to be moving on to the main card itself here, and fight number 1 opening up the card. Now there was once upon a time, say about 2017, 2018, where the UFC went through this phase where if they weren't too sure about what to do with a pay-per-view main card, they would just throw on like a random strawweight fight. I think anybody who watches the channel will know the infamy that is Polyana Viana versus JJ Aldrich. I think in 2025 that has now shifted to, if in doubt, Kevin Holland fight, because he is back in action for the 3rd time this year, and he's going to be taking on Vicente Luque. Holland comes in as a minus 230 favourite. You can get Luque at plus 190. And I think the question we need to ask coming into this one is, I still don't 100% know what we see Kevin Holland as anymore. Is this a guy who still has potential, or is he just sort of this generation's Donald Cerrone?
Wow, nailed it. First off, good call. Now, Mr. Holland is, who knows, right? Is he, like you said, is it Kevin on vacation, or is it Kevin here to do business? We don't know. He's really duck goose in that regard. It's hard to tell. And man, I'm hoping good stuff for him, but he's more trending. Let's be honest. He's more trending in the this era's Donald Cerrone. That was a great comparison, by the way. That's still living in my head. Yeah, I don't feel like he has championship aspiration, and that's fine. Maybe you just want to fight as best as you can and make good money. Hey, that's cool. And I just think that maybe once the fans get behind you, then everybody expects you to go upwards. Some people just hit a level and stay there, and we might have seen it. We might have seen Kevin's level. Like, he's, good, just he'll probably not ever be challenging for the title.
Because he has got some really good wins on his record here. I've got the full list of some of the more notable ones, because in his most recent fight, of course, he beat Gunnar Nelson, which I think was it was something that I think made a lot of people sit up, because, yeah, Gunnar Nelson, he's not really that active these days, maybe not the fighter he was, say, back in 2015, 2016. But there was a lot of people that thought Gunny's just going to get him down and just sub him straight away. But Holland neutralised him on the ground, and he was piecing him apart on the feet. And I think a lot of people took that quite highly. As well as that, he's also had wins over Michael Chiesa, Ponzinibbio, and then you look at people like Jacare Souza, Fluffy Hernandez, which I think is a win which has aged very, very well. Jeff Neal, of course, when he was on the regional scene. And there are these real flashes of moments where, while I agree that Kevin Holland has kind of hit sort of like a ceiling of that sort of fringe top 15 guy, you look at the names he's beaten, and you look at the fact that he had a really close fight with the current champion, Jack Della Maddalena. You think maybe there might be a little bit more in there.
I don't think it would be fair for anyone to question his talent. I don't think his talent level or ability. But you know what the thing about potential is? Most of the time it isn't. That's the problem. And to harness all of that talent that may be inside of him takes other elements. And I'm not going to judge him because I don't know him personally like that. But it seems like that kind of dedicated focus to be in that lane isn't what's in his heart right now. And let's be honest. Okay, I respect the win over Gunnar Nelson, but he needed, capital letters, needed that win. And the UFC gave him excuse the baseball expression, a soft pitch, something that was winnable, because if not, then they don't have a guy. They don't have a guy to open the card. If he takes too many L's, he's not that guy, right? So, he's a marketable, recognizable face, and the UFC does what it needs to do to protect its products. So I'm not putting anything against that win, but I'm not putting too much on it either. And man, I just want to see Kevin Holland just be the guy that we saw just a couple years ago, like hungry. Now, sometimes he's in there, he's talking to people outside the cage and just seems wildly distracted. That's the word I was looking for. A focused Kevin Holland is the version I would like to see coming forward, but I don't know.
Like, honestly, Kevin Holland in 2020, he got my vote as Fighter of the Year.
Why not? I mean, didn't he win like 4 or 5 fights that year?
I think he won 5, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, how could you knock that, right? Right on.
You made a point there when you talked about the Gunnar Nelson fight that you felt that that was kind of a softball for Kevin Holland. Would you put Vicente Luque in that bracket as well? Because there's a lot of people who, with Vicente Luque, yeah, he was always, I think he was around sort of, I think he reached top 7, top 8 at one point in his career, always known for having a fantastic chin. But I do think we have in recent fights seen somebody, even though he won his last fight, I think we're seeing somebody who is starting to decline as a fighter. This is not the same guy that was having those wars with Mike Perry and Brian Barberena.
I, full disclosure, love Vicente Luque. He's a great man, good dude. Besides that, moving on, it's clear and obvious to anyone who's watching his fights that he is declined. He has already declined. And I don't even want to, I'm not disagreeing with you, bro. I'm just leaning onto it. He's already declined. He's in that phase. He's no longer title challenger conversation. He was for years. He was near or around there. He's not. He's at that point too, right? This fight for both these guys, bouncing off of rebound wins, not glorious wins, but I think both guys are at that point of what's their value. And I think that's why the UFC's put them together, because either of these guys are easy recognizable and great for this spot on a main card. But who are we going to keep riding with? Because the UFC's been cutting veterans that cost a lot of money. Let's just keep it 100 on that point. So I'm not saying either of these guys' job is in jeopardy, but the UFC is letting people go that cost a lot of money that they can't profit from. So,
and I think as well, another kind of concern I have with Luque too is obviously he suffered the first knockout of his career when he lost to Jeff Neal, which was a real, I think it was like 3-round beatdown before Neal managed to get the finish. And then the report came out that he actually suffered a brain bleed. Do you think it's wise for the UFC, bearing that in mind, to allow him to keep fighting? Or do you think this maybe just us sort of wringing our handbags a bit?
I'm going to lean on to the fact that they have medical clearing protocols that I don't fully understand because I don't have a degree in any kind of medical training. So with that being said, I'm going to lean on to the fact that they tested, he came out okay. And Luque's, Vicente's not dumb. He's good. He's well off enough that he's not like scrounging to have fights to feed himself. So with that being said, I think this is just more, I'm going to lean onto the wisdom of the fighter himself. He knows his body, and to the medical protocols in place, because there's other people. We just seen it. I mean, not trying to jump the gun, but we just seen it recently. A medical protocol killed a main event. So I'm going to lean onto those professionals, what they know, what they do. And there's been other fighters who've had questionable medical circumstances and they aren't good to fight. So yeah, I mean, that's ugly stuff, right? We don't want to hear any kind of, because health is wealth. We don't want to hear any kind of stuff about that about anybody. So I'm just gonna lean onto the fact that the Warrior has given us a lot. He's fought a lot. He's given us a lot of fights, and this he's burned up a lot of rubber on his tread, and we're gonna enjoy what's left. And hopefully that means a good fight between these two guys.
And if Luque is going to win this one, what would you think is the best way for him to do it? What would you say is his strengths and weaknesses?
Well, his strengths. Everybody knows his strength is he's a banger. He can bang. Now on the other side, Kevin, there's lots of reports of Kevin being one of the hardest punchers in the division. Some other fighters saying the hardest puncher they ever felt. His strength, I think, would be his combos, right? If he can get in, because Kevin hits hard, but he doesn't throw multiple that much. So if he can out volume him, I think that's probably his way to go.
I have been concerned with Luke here that a lot of his recent losses have come against opponents who have a lot of side-to-side movement. And that does make me a little bit concerned because I think Holland is somebody who does like to utilise that a lot. And I think Kevin Holland as well, he does know how to use his reach. I think he's got a good long jab. As you mentioned before, big powerful hands, even if there's not too many combinations. I would be interested to see what could happen if Luque does try and take it to the mat, because you look at some of Luque's finishes recently. He's had in his career 4 Darce chokes and Anaconda choke, so he gets a hold of that neck. He's more than capable of submitting Holland. But we did see Holland neutralise Gunny Nelson, who, in my opinion, is a more acclaimed submission threat than what Luque is. I think it's a really fascinating fight, but the shop-worn stature of Luque is a concern for me. So I am leaning towards Kevin Holland winning this one.
I fully see what you're saying, and that's where my fear is. If Kevin finds him, I don't really think Luque can sustain too many good shots. You know, it's already, look at the recent history. Now, on the other hand, though, it's just, what is Kevin gonna show up? You know, is vacation Kevin showing up? Is work Kevin showing up? So that's the big one, and I'm going with my heart on this one. I'm gonna go the other way. I'm supporting Luque in this fight, but it's not with great confidence. There's more. I'll be honest. Money should probably go to Holland, but my heart's gonna go with Luque.
Which is the best way to put it. Head and heart. It's a fine balance you've got to work on this show. As YouTube's only Raquel Pennington fan, I know that one all too well.
Hey, shout out Rocky. She's cool. She's real cool. Yeah. She's an awesome lady.
And the baby girl just had their birthday as well, so congratulations.
Definitely. Hey, I didn't know that. Thank you for that information. Yeah, much love and support there.
Well, we are going to be introducing a lot of people to some more new information because we need to tell them about a new signing to the UFC. So originally, Mario Bautista was supposed to be taking on Chito Vera in a bantamweight encounter, but Vera was forced to pull out with injury, and stepping in to take his place is the latest acquisition from Bellator, which is Patchy Mix, a guy with a 20-1 record, the last Bellator Bantamweight champion. And so, I think to maybe borrow a little bit of a line from Jerry Seinfeld, what's the deal with Patchy Mix?
Nice. Yeah. Not because of him, talking into the mic, because everybody else talking, his stock is really high, and I don't know if he's overvalued. You know, I think it's a weird combination by the wider fan base to, one, shit all over the Bellator and PFL product, then simultaneously call Patchy the greatest bantamweight on the planet. Like, you don't respect anybody in the league that he was fighting in, then somehow he's also the best one in the world. Very interesting. I'm hoping that this is just a good fight. I don't really care if Patchy wins or loses. I just hope it's a good fight, because I'm so drained of good signings getting picked up too late. I'm not saying Patchy's too late, but it is a little late. And then everybody going, oh, they're trash. Like, okay, like maybe not. So the timing on this is not bad. He's still in a decent spot in his career. It's the layoff that's a little concerning, and Bautista ain't no joke. But definitely I'm glad that he's stepping up to the spot, because, you know, it's getting a little, I'm not gonna say crowded, but it is a little crowded as far as big names and acquisitions coming over. And there's only going to be so many that have success and the UFCs want to get behind. And so if Patchy Mix wants to make that splash, he's got to do it now.
You made the point there, though, of Patchy being one of the many names which is joining the UFC these days. Obviously, in recent months, we've had Pitbull join, which I think you were referencing with the signing fighters past their prime. But also Michael Venom Page came recently. We're going to be talking about Kayla Harrison, who came in as well just a couple of years ago. Why do you think the PFL seemed to be dropping the ball with a lot of those big signings that they had? Do you think it's just simply they don't have the money to compete with the UFC? Is it Don Davis mismanaging the fighters? Because it's no coincidence to me that a lot of the names which they have been letting go of recently were guys who were under Bellator. People like Mix, Pitbull, Aaron Pico, who's going to be making his debut soon.
So lucky enough to have a couple of friends and contacts who were in that mix. They were Bellator fighters, and when the acquisition came and things, and well, there's a couple of reasons. One, some of the bigger stars have no interest in fighting in the tournament format. So, like, okay, your company was acquired. Well, this is how we work here. I don't want to do that. Well, sit down then, right? So that one is a big one. That's a big one that people are really not picking up on, and they're kind of focusing on the next one, which is a lot of the contracts, the numbers behind those contracts, those were negotiated by the Bellator unit prior to the acquisition. So the PFL is looking at some of these guys, and I'm just not trying to disrespect Gegard Mousasi, but they're looking at him like, dude, you're not worth $500,000 a fight. I'm sorry. You just where you're at now, you're not even the reigning champion now. So you have situations like that, where the PFLs wanted to renegotiate them at a different rate. And the fighters are like, no, I have a standing contract that you guys absorbed. Pay me this. So there's a stalemate on that. So format of how they're fighting, the cost of it. And last but not least, the PFL, let's be real. A lot of people weren't even supporting Bellator. I was doing the watch parties. You guys weren't watching. Let's stop lying. I not even watching PFL. But when they acquired them, everybody's like, "Oh, they're gonna save Bellator." They weren't saving Bellator. They grabbed a whole bunch of people under contract to fill their rosters for their seasons. Once they got their tournament brackets filled up, all these extra names, they don't matter. So if you're not turning numbers, you're not bringing people in. Hey, it's cost analysis, right? Every business does it, and that's what it is. We think of these fighters, with our hearts. On the business side, absolutely not. It's numbers, and views and pulls, and that's just the game.
So if there are people out there who have never seen Patchy Mix fight, what kind of fighter can they expect?
A guy who brings it and has dangerous tools on every level. He's a guy who I think has already shown he can go the distance easily. He's dangerous pretty much everywhere. But what's the level? Right? That's always the question. The question is always what is the level? And I'm not dogging. I love a lot of the Bellator fighters, and I know they are world class. But did his last opponent fight Jose Aldo? No. Now he is. So there's as they say in the overused expression in the game, there's levels to this.
Some of the notable names he's beaten are Magomedov, he beat him twice, Sergio Pettis, Hafian Stott, Kyoji Horiguchi. Although I will say that fight was a bantamweight, I think Horiguchi was undersized for that fight. And James Gallagher and Vicky Banhejas. So I would consider some of the more marquee wins on Patchy's record.
Definitely, those are solid names, but we're pretty hardcore, man. And let's be 300% honest. What's the highest name on that list? What would you think was the most prestigious name on that list?
I'd probably say in terms of name value Horiguchi, although that was a 135 Horiguchi, which I don't think is his best weight class.
Fair enough. So what is the translation value to the UFC now? Well, Sergio, I love Sergio, but Sergio elected to leave. So, it's tough. And this is one of the things, well, we will never know until he goes, and we'll know in a few days whether he's at that level or not.
So we'll talk about his opponent in this fight here, Mario Bautista, a 15-2 record. Some of his notable wins in his career include people like Vicky Simone, Brian Kelleher, and most recently Jose Aldo. And I bring up the Aldo fight specifically because if you go online and you ask most people about Mario Bautista, he may be up there with a certain selection of fans as one of the most hated fighters on the roster right now, which I think is incredibly harsh. And I say this on two fronts. One, at the end of the day, mixed martial art is a sport where the aim is to win. And even though Mario did win that fight in a very boring fashion using the wall and stall, he got the job done. It's a results business at the end of the day, and he thought that was the best way for him to get to the next step in his career. But also, let's look at some of Jose Aldo's other losses before then. Volkanovski used Wallenstall to beat him. Merab Dvalishvili, Wallenstall to beat him. Both of those guys seem to get a pass for the way they fought against Aldo. Yet Bautista doesn't. Why do you think that is?
Because how much momentum, how much fan base did those guys have when those matches occurred in the first place, right? If they don't already have that clustered hard support, a good amount of supporter groups behind them, beating a legend in a not phenomenal fashion does not gain you any cool points. It does not help your cause as far as the fans go. And I want to add to that, man. You know, these guys, they want to lay heavy and dog him. This kind of stuff has happened in other combat sports throughout history. You know, I'm gonna pull up the great Larry Holmes from boxing. He got no love because he beat up Muhammad Ali, right? Like, you know, and I know other guys did too, but he got no love. He got no love because that was the case. And I just say this, man. You fight Jose Aldo. Like you go fight Jose Aldo and tell me what was the best way to do it, and then win in a particular fashion. Like you said, yeah, win. And he was in there. He was in the cage with him. He found the pathway. Was it a great one? No. Arguably, sometimes when I honestly, I kind of had that fight for Jose, but who cares? The only opinion that matters is the three judges, and they saw it that way for him. So, you know, I think everybody gets sour when the thing they wanted to happen didn't happen. And everybody, you know, not everybody, but a vast majority of people just love Jose. I'm one of them. So they take it personal. They take that out on him instead of just going, hey, he's a fighter on the rise and he checked the box and he's moving forward. But on the other hand, don't think that Mario, once again, he's not deaf. He's not blind. He's heard the criticism. He's even come out in some recent interviews going, man, I'm ready to move that fight in the past. Like, I'm tired about hearing about it. And maybe he has a little bit of extra that he's going to put on Patchy Mix just because of that.
Because I think a lot of people are forgetting just what a good fighter Mario Bautista is.
He didn't get that fight with Jose being a bum.
What is it? Is it like a 5-6 fight winning streak right now?
Oh, good question. I think it's 5 at least, right? That's what I know. Somebody I would have to pull up the record, but it's definitely 5. I can count I'm looking it up right now. Let's see. So, oh my god, dude, I way undersold that. 7 amazing, right? Hate on that, people. 7 wins in a row.
And one of his losses is Corey Sandhagen as well, who's one of the elites in this division.
I mean, dude, Corey's awesome. Let's just put it out. He's at the top. So you got the world's best, right? And fortunately and unfortunately, it's not like any other sport where you get to see this match played again, or in a few weeks or a few months they play it again. It's one of those arguments. Hey, if you fought 10 times, what would happen? Hard to say. These guys are the very best in the world. Maybe it would be 50-50. Who knows? But that one time that they did, that was the result, and there's no shame in it. There's no shame in a Corey Sandhagen loss.
So where do you think this fight's going to play out then? Because if you look at both fighters on paper, I would make an argument that both of them do their best work on the mat. Patchy Mix is a fantastic jiu-jitsu practitioner, very good at getting the back. I've heard a lot of people make some comparisons that he's a lot like Aljamain Sterling. I think while I think Aljo is better at getting to the back, Patchy is better at working the submissions and getting the subs from the back, if you know what I mean. And with Bautista, you've got a very good chain wrestler, a guy who likes to press forward, likes to try and be somewhat aggressive when it comes to the striking, wide stance. I think this could be a real contrast of styles, and I'm very interested to see how that could play out.
It's always interesting when this is the case, but I've seen enough times when the athletes have similar skill sets in the same arena, the fight evolves into the B category, So if they're both aces on the ground, which they are, there's a good chance that 1, it might neutralize, or 2, both of them will respect that A game in their opponent and divert to other causes, and whatever that may be, whether it be striking or the dreaded wall stall. And I hope it's not that one, but
I hope not either. I actually did put that down as one of the notes that I think could happen, where we could have two grapplers having a kickboxing match.
That's very, very real. Very real. It happens all the time.
And I mean, those can be fun as well. I mean, like Usman versus Colby 1, I think is the one that immediately comes to mind. Everyone thought it was going to be quite cagey, quite wrestling heavy, and they just brawl with one another.
Yes, because once again, it comes to that point where it's like, yeah, sure, I know this is my A game, that's your A game. So what are we gonna do? Be stuck here like with no real progress and damage? I'm gonna damage you. I gotta win the round. If I don't want to have rounds where it's stuck to a opinion of micro inches. If we're both, chain wrestling against each other, now it's just a micro difference. No, if I sock you in the face, okay, the round's mine, right? So yeah, I agree.
And I think if it does play out on the feet, I'd arguably say that Bautista has the advantage because the one thing I have noticed from Pachi is, yes, very good submission game, very good at getting to the back, but for bantamweight, he's quite slow.
Fair enough. It's hard for me to call any of these brothers slow, but the one thing is you could say about Patrick is sometimes he gets a little relaxed, and Mario doesn't. So maybe I think you're onto something there.
That being said, even though I think Bautista could have the advantage in the striking, I don't think Pachi's going to fall into that trap. I think he's going to manage to get himself to the back. I think Bautista is good enough to avoid being subbed, but I can see Pachi Mix riding this one out. I'm going to say Pachi Mix wins this one. I think there's a chance Bautista could steal a round, but I'm going to say Pachi by decision.
Fair enough. And man, I don't have strong indicators on this one, to be honest. But I'm gonna go with the average. The if historically I don't have any of the stats, go look it up. But normally when guys come over, there's only a few RDRs. There's only a few Austin Vanderfords. There's only a few of them that come over and win the first rodeo. I'm not saying that Pachi can't have a good career here. I'm not saying that he won't have great stuff, but I don't care what, man. Octagon shock is real. I don't care that he's had a world title somewhere else. This is the biggest fight of his whole damn life by a lot. And for Mario, this is just a chance to make everybody shut up. So I think there's less pressure on him. There's so much pressure on Pachi. I'm going to slide over to Team Super Mario.
Good way to look at it. So we're going to move on to fight number 3 here. Now this is a fight that should have happened a few months ago. It was booked on the main card of Fight Night Mexico. It is Kelvin Gastelum who is going to be taking on Joe Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer comes in for this one as a minus 375 favourite. Kelvin is a plus 295 underdog. So one of the things I want to talk about with regards to this fight, I actually made a post about it on social media a few days ago, which is, we know that the UFC likes to get behind certain fighters and likes to push them as big names and, give them Apex main events, give them sort of higher pedestals than what maybe their talent deserves at that moment in time. And one of the ones I find more interesting is Joe Pfeiffer, because even though Joe Pfeiffer has done a lot of very impressive things in the UFC, I'm not sure what he has which a lot of other fighters don't. Because how many sort of middleweights with big power and a big mouth are there in the UFC? There's countless of them. And yet he seems to be the one that the company really got behind.
I've been guessing for years on how they pick their favoritism formula. Like, how do we get our bias behind certain individuals? Maybe they tell a funny joke or something. I don't know. But Pfeiffer's clearly got the A, yeah, he's got the A side promotion behind him for sure. Now, this falls right into the formula I was talking about earlier, man. This is a baton toss. This is the exchange of stardom. This is the script is here. Kelvin, we all know Kelvin, but Kelvin's not sellable anymore. He's useless as far as the promotion is concerned. Respectfully, just roll with it. He's not going to be selling tickets, but he's known. So what do? We got this newer product, big mouth, all that stuff, and let's exchange it. Let's exchange the known quantity. Let's hope he takes an L against Joe. And now Joe beats somebody. Now Joe beats somebody, and okay, now we can start going a little further in this build of Piper. And I don't know, man. They do this all the time. They do it frequently. I'll just say this is more not just on the build of Joe, but a little bit of this is what you get, Kelvin, for squandering every second, third, and fourth chance that you've been given to show up and show that you're the athlete you're supposed to be, which unfortunately he just never rose to the level of expectations. And yeah, that's the case here.
I was actually going to ask that. You sort of took the words out of my mouth, because bearing in mind, I think Kelvin Gastelum won the Ultimate Fighter when he was, 21, 22 years old? So you thought, hey, and he did so by beating Uriah Hall, when Hall was like the big buzz character from that season. Do you think he maybe did underachieve in his career, bearing in mind what the expectation was? I mean, because at the same time, though, he beat some notable fighters. He should have fought for the belt when the Whittaker fight fell through. Would you say it is an underachieving career, or do you think he's sort of did as well as he could?
I don't want to say he underachieved, but at the same time, I don't think he quite reached the limits that he could have. I mean, let's be honest. The whole like nutritionist taco fiasco, like, bro, you're out there missing basic nutrition at the highest pro level. You're missing weight. You're undisciplined. There's no reason for you to be at middleweight. There's no reason. There's really no reason. You're not that big, respectfully. So that part, and we'll just never know. And not taking anything away from his wins, but it's clear and obvious that his flirting and misdirection in what weight am I was clearly the thing that held him back, the parachute on his career.
So we'll talk about Kelvin Gastelum in a bit more detail, since we're already doing that. So a 19-9 record. His most recent fight, he did get himself a win when he fought Daniel Rodriguez on the Saudi Arabia card. 6 KOs, 5 submissions, and his notable wins kind of read like a who's who of sort of like the great middleweight veterans of sort of like the early Reebok era. So you've got Jacare in there, Bisping, Vitor, Tim Kennedy, Johnny Hendricks he also beat, Nate Marquardt. So he had some notable names, but I think he kind of caught them at the right time to sort of progress his career a bit.
Absolutely. Like, you just nailed it. Those are all wins against guys in kit from two kit deals ago. Like, irrelevant, quite frankly, in this year. Not taking anything away from the status of those guys, but year 2025, irrelevant. And maybe I'm just sour because his win over Chris Curtis was bullshit. He headbutted the shit out of him. Chris Curtis, my boy. Dude, that's not cool. Like, that one's still not settling with me. So he's not he's not going towards the title. Let's just be honest. He's not at the level of going towards the title anymore. So what does he become? A really expensive gatekeeper? No. He becomes the food for the product that they're trying to sell on with Joe Pyfer.
And I think another reason why this fight's been booked is we are nearly 30 fights into Kelvin's career. He has never been finished with strikes. He's taking on a guy who's built his reputation on being a real power puncher in this division.
Let's talk about that, dude. 30 fights. 30 fights, about there. Somewhere about 30-ish fights, in my opinion, of watching the sport this length of time, is about how many pro MMA fights you have before old, whether it's father time, whether it's wear and tear, whatever terms you want to use. The tide turns against you. Only get about 30 if you're even an elite fighter, 30 really good fights in you, and then it just changes. And that seems to be maybe it's not fight 30 exactly, but 31, 32 could be, but still right here, that's a dangerous formula. Like, there's no, okay, shout out Vegas bookies. They're not on this line the way they are just off of guessing. They know what they're doing, and it's a big ask. It's a big ask for Kelvin to win right now.
Would you say there's anything that we need to look out for in regards to Joe's game outside of the power? Is he just a big puncher, or do you think there's more sort of method to his madness, as it were.
I think that's where the danger of Joe really shows itself, because we haven't seen everything he can do. We haven't seen what his max ceiling is. I'm not saying we kind of know what the max ceiling of Kelvin is. So there's we could find out a new wrinkle in Joe's game in a couple nights from now. So that's that's the actually the dangerous part, is we haven't actually tested and unwrapped all the rest of his game. Maybe he's just been relying on the part that he likes the most, but shoot, we could see a dominant top game. We could, maybe, who knows? Until we see him fail in these other arenas, we kind of just got to leave it as mystery box, and that's dangerous.
Because I think the only kind of indication we've had with Joe in recent years in the UFC was the main event he had with Hermanson. Because I would say Joe won those first 2 rounds, won them fairly comfortably. He did slow down in the third. And Jack started to take over and basically just did it by just firing off the jab. And Joe just couldn't seem to keep up and ended up losing the decision. This being 3 rounds, I think, benefits him. And I don't think that Kelvin has that kind of technical game to exploit some of the limitations that in the way that Hermanson did.
Does Kelvin even have the gas tank to exploit that kind of? Because even in recent activity, we see that he slows down quite a bit too. So, I that's a question. Could he even capitalize on such a thing and then reverse right while Joe's still, I don't know how much, but he's still progressing, right? He's still moving slowly and surely upwards. Maybe that's a part of his game. Maybe this whole time, maybe going to Mexico, everybody knows that elevation there is insane. It's a mental challenge just to even compete there. What would that require? Badass cardio. Maybe that's a weapon he added since we haven't seen him less. Maybe not, but you gotta just think that these guys are adding tools to their arsenal, and knowing who you're fighting and gas them, we might see the ability for him to stay at the right pace the whole time.
I'm definitely leaning towards Pfeiffer winning this one. It's just my question is whether or not he's able to do it by a finish. I think that I agree with you. I think that Kelvin maybe is reaching the limit in terms of his durability, but I don't think we're there just yet. I can see him eating those big shots, but Pfeiffer wins this one. I'm going to say 30-27, but he doesn't get the finish. I think Kelvin's chin holds up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not here going to say that Kelvin's going to get slept, but I think he's going to receive enough damage that he's not going to know how to return it, and he's not going to have an answer for it, and this is going to be a slow, long, miserable night eating punches.
So now we move on to our core main event, and the women's bantamweight title is on the line. It is Julianna Pena, the champion, who is going to be taking on Kayla Harrison. Now, the bookmakers' odds for this one, you can give Kayla a minus 625 favourite. Julie comes in at plus 455. We also ran a poll on the INC YouTube channel asking people who they think was going to win this one. 87% of people are picking Kayla to win this one, 13% going the way of Julie. So very one-sided, but not as one-sided as what happened when Julie beat Nunes, which was, I believe, 6% of people picking her to win that one. So people are giving her a bit more of a chance than they did back in 2021. So we're going to start off this by kind of almost sort of like a state of the union in regards to the women's bantamweight division. I feel like we do this every sort of 6 or 7 months. I think it's safe to say that if you were to look at the weakest divisions in the UFC, women's 135 would probably be down there with heavyweight. The question I want to ask though is, if you had to compare the weight class now to how it was, say, in 2021, 2022, when we were nearing the end of the Nunes era, would you say the weight class is in a healthier place now than it was back then? Because on the one hand, yes, you don't have that big dominant face of the division, but at the same time, it's a lot more open.
I think it's clear as day that it's more healthy. Not because of a bad thing of Nunes. She earned it. She froze the division. The division was frozen. A Nunes fight was ornamental at that point. It was a guaranteed conclusion. Oh, Nunes fight. You didn't even know or care who the B-side was. It was like, oh, Nunes is winning. So what kind of fun is that? Now we have fights where it's like, oh, you might not be the biggest Rocky Pennington fan. You might not be a Pena fan. Maybe you are a Kayla Harrison fan, maybe you're not. But at least those matches go, oh, well, I think, or maybe, or could, right? The other conversation is, oh, Nunes by landslide. Whatever she wants to do is going to happen. So yes, at least there's a conversation now of what could or maybe happen. And like it or not, there's actually some passion, whether it's disgruntledness towards Pena, whether it's love for Harrison or whatever. There's some vibe. I was lucky enough to be in Miami for shoot, what event was that? It was just a recent one. But anyway, they were doing the promo for it, and I couldn't believe the energy at the press conference for this. The way the fans were with the energy that they were reacting to both ladies, and I go, damn, that's what's up. That's what I like to see, because I'm kind of sick of insecure dudes out there pissing on the women's game because they probably get beat up by these ladies. Real talk. That's why they're talking crazy. But I'm glad to see the passion for it now. That the excitement, like, ooh, what's up? Either which way you're on it. So yeah, definitely healthier now, man.
And I'm glad you brought up as well the sort of buzz around this fight, because I don't know if it's Sean and Merab not capturing the public's attention, but Julie and Kayla are doing a hell of a good job selling this fight.
Bang, right on. This is one of the few co-main events that's actually, to me, like you said, doing just as much work, if not more work, than the main event itself. You know, I'm not dogging it. This is the part two. We saw, it's not like the first fight was so compelling between O'Malley and Merab that like it's like, oh, you know, it was kind of clear. In this fight, it's unknown data. This is fresh new territory. This is let's explore this option. So I think there's a little bit of that. And honestly, Kayla Harrison has had that what if on her name for so long, right? And Julianna, the dream killer, the anti what you want to happen, it creates a nice fire versus ice scenario. And yeah, it's a good vibe on this one.
So we're going to talk about Julie in a bit more detail here. So a 12-5 record, two-time UFC champion. I have jokingly written down on my notes, I've called her Ronnie Biggs because of the great train robbery of UFC 307. Actually, on that point, I find it interesting that there's such a vibe recently about undeserved rematches. You could make an argument, bearing in mind every journalist scored that fight in favour of Rocky, but no one ever talked about giving Rocky a rematch.
This is where fandom stuff, you know, if you don't have the people behind you, the championship belt does nothing for your popularity. If anything, it only enhances what's already going on. You're either not popular and now you're just an ultra unpopular champion, or you are popular and now it's good, right? The belt doesn't change that. So unfortunately, for Ms. Pennington, she just never have the love. She didn't have the love and support or respect from the fans. I don't know why. She's a great lady. She signed some stuff for me, so she's awesome. Give her some love, folks. But beyond that, she she just didn't have the hearts of the people. I don't know why, but she just didn't. So when she stumbles or she gets an unfair shake of the stick, you're not going to have what masses, what group of people are going to stand up for her? Unfortunately, not.
And I think as well, the UFC have sort of attached their wagon to the Kayla horse. And I think regardless of what happened in that fight, I mean, Pena versus Pennington could have been Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit levels of awesome. And they still would have given Kayla the next title fight.
Oh, absolutely. And in fairness and respect to the game, right? Rocky is a mild-mannered individual. She doesn't, for her being Rocky, she doesn't rock the mic. She doesn't say controversial stuff. She didn't come out and piss and moan on social media like some people do. She didn't say it was bull. You know what I mean? She didn't do any of that. So there's no energy on that side. So I get it. Now, Kayla's, once again, say it again, for years, from her PFL years, from fresh out of judo, people wanted to see her in the UFC. So, you know, there's always this, I want to see it. So, of course, now we're getting to see it. And the UFC knows. Let's be honest also. We know as fans, there's only so many women that you say their name and people react. Let's be honest. So, with that being said, Kayla's one of them. She's one of the very few. And that reaction in this era is a positive one, but she carries weight to her name. And of course, that's the UFC's got to sell fights. This fight wouldn't sell well if she couldn't move the needle, and she does. So, it is what it is.
So we'll talk about Kayla in a bit more detail here. So an 18-1 record. In the most recent win, she beat Ketlen Vieira, UFC 307. Outside of the Ketlen wins, she ran through Holly Holm on a UFC debut. And then you look at some of the fighters she fought when she was in the PFL. Obviously, Larissa Pacheco, who she fought 3 times, won 2 of them. Also Marina Spivak, Caitlin Young, and Aspen Ladd. So there is a bit of a drop-off, I would say, from Pacheco downwards. There is a bit of a drop-off in terms of Kayla's opposition. Based on what you've seen from her against Holly Holm and against Ketlen Vieira, what did you make of those 2 performances?
I was more like, Holly, what are you doing in that fight? She chose to not go vintage. She really leaned into her, modern era grappling format of herself, which was the wrong formula. Like, don't try to bring the grappling game to the judo elite that Kayla Harrison is. Can I mix something in that breakdown you did, though? Let's not miss the important parts of the weights. She was at 155 for some of those fights in the PFL. A couple of those fights against Pacheco was 55, then down to 45. Obviously, now you're 35. Those, that's a big deal all in itself. So there. Now, the most recent one, I think that really goes to show where some of her lacking is, right? She can put you down and she can stay on top of you, but she hasn't really shown the ability to sub too much against girls of the higher level. She has some subs against, the competition that you're not going to make cheers about, but at the higher level, she's not really finishing, right? So that's the thing. And there was a ground and pound, right? Ground and pound is coming along, but one of those 2 things should have shot up to a higher level, in my opinion, to be really concrete, solid in this fight for a championship fight, to say you're going to go against someone like Julianna.
And obviously, as part of a record and a part of a time in the PFL, she also has that loss against Pacheco in their 3rd fight. And I think that did highlight some of the big concerns that I personally have with Kayla Harrison as a fighter, which is I don't think she's that good of a gauger when it comes to distance management. There's a lot of front kicks, doesn't really set up a lot of her strikes to set up her takedowns. And also as well, once Pacheco started to get a read on Kayla's distance and she was starting to tag her, Kayla was reacting very big.
Okay, first to credit to Miss Pacheco. She cracks, she hits, and I think she would be very suitable in the UFC, to be honest. She would ring some bells. Now that you nailed it, that is the weak spot. By the way, I'm a big fan of Kayla Harrison. I think she's awesome. But with that being said, she has a glaring, huge weakness. Her footwork. Her footwork is, the worst of all her skill sets. And that plays into a lot of situations throughout the fight and kills your striking is mostly your foot. It's your feet. 60% of striking is your footwork. So that part is it's still a big question mark, not good as what we've seen recently, and could lead her into trouble long term. Also, she does slow down, and Julianna does not, and 5-rounder. So we'll see.
And in terms of Julianna as well, we were talking about her and then we went off on a bit of a tangent, so I apologise for that. But when it comes to Julianna, one of the things I did find quite interesting in regards to the build of this fight is the UFC will upload if a fight is involved in a title match, they usually upload like a classic fight from their history to try and hype up the fight, say, hey, this person's competing, that kind of jazz. And he uploaded the first fight against Nunes, UFC 269. And if you read the comments on that video, nearly all the comments were people making excuses for Nunes losing that fight, which I kind of have issues on 2 fronts. One, I think it glosses over how bad Nunes fought in that fight. I know there's some rumours that she wasn't 100%, she was dealing with some health issues, but she didn't take Julie seriously. She gassed herself out, and when the fight started to get a bit grimy, a bit dirty, she was the one who broke first. But also, and I think the more important part in regards to this, it discards and discredits the work Julie did in that fight.
My man, this you nailed it. This the cope. These people are coping. They're trying to make up and just trying to find a way to excuse it or whatever. It happens all the time. I mean, I remember when Anderson Silva got clipped by Weidman. It was lucky. It was lucky. Not till years later, people go, "Oh, maybe Anderson was goofing around too much." Right? They don't want to give the love when the great one stumbles. You know, that when they show that they're human, when they're not superhuman for that night. Right? They don't want to give credit to the other person for showing up. When Mike Tyson got beat up by Holyfield, they didn't want to give the love to Holyfield. It was, what's wrong with Mike, right? So that's it. It's an ongoing thing. It always happens when the big perennial, superhero stumbles. There's always going to be the people, the blind fans are going to try to cook up something. But yeah, no, Julianna showed up and she saw Nunes as a human. She didn't see her as the superwoman. She didn't see her as the goddess of the division. She saw her just as a woman to compete on that night. Yeah, sure. You want to get into a debate? 100 times out of 100, does Nunes beat her probably 95 times? Maybe, arguably, I could see that argument being played out, but it doesn't matter. That's not how sports works. Sports works on that night, and that night Pena was better, and people just got to deal with it.
Because the things that stood out for me was Pena took away the low kicks, which is pretty much the start of all of Nunes' combinations. And as Nunes started swinging her overhands, getting a little bit desperate to try and get that big shot, she countered with the jab, and she just threw it over and over. Yes, it looked awkward. Yes, it looked cumbersome, but it was effective. It got the job done.
Let's pull something from the second fight, right? Nunes won, but people don't want to look at the heart. Pena got dropped. She was getting mugged. I don't know how many times she got popped on the ground. Her face was swollen. Was she running for cover? Was she backing up and looking for space? No, she was marching through the front door, doing her thing. You know how much heart that takes to be staring across the goat who's whooping you and still go, nah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm coming for you. And now she wasn't successful, but the hearts are already on Nunes. It's not going to swing over. But I think as much as people want to go, make excuses in that first fight for Nunes, there's not that same equal. Hey, look at what happened in the second fight. She showed that warrior is inside that woman. And that is the part of Julianna's X factor that I think really people, they're going to sleep on and regret otherwise, because that woman got all the warrior spirit anyone ever needs.
And I think that heart, if Julie is going to win this fight, she's going to have to lean a lot on that heart, because from what I've seen of Julianna in regards to some of her fights, I always try and look up a comparable opponent that Julie's faced. And in the same case also with Kayla, the type of person she's fought as well. I think Julie gets taken down a lot. Her takedown defense isn't great. So I can see good portions of this fight with Kayla being on the top, landing the ground and pound, trying to chase a sub. But if Julie is able to show those survival instincts, like she did in the first round of the Nunes fight, like she did for most of the second fight, I am interested to see what could happen if she is able to drag this into a third round, a fourth round, because that weight cut, and it's going to be an even bigger weight cut because you have to drop that extra pound at the championship level, I do think it is going to impact Kayla at some point. And maybe it could be the cardio as well. I am interested to see what this could look like in the championship rounds. The question is, do I think it's going to get there? And I'm a little bit skeptical of that.
I think there's a good chance it can get there because, respectfully, Kayla Harrison is not much of a finisher. She'll just dominate. She's a dominator. She doesn't finish. So there is that very big possibility that it's going to go all 5 rounds. And let's just talk physical style. Look at look at Pena's body. She's lean, athletic body. We know Kayla's a big, strong powerhouse. Those muscles take oxygen. That's a lot to feed for a long period of time. And, I don't even, not trying to say anything too crazy, but like Nunes couldn't knock her out. Put that in capital letters. Nunes couldn't knock her out. You think Kayla's going to knock her out? That seems like a big of stretch. That seems like a big ask. So there is a very real possibility that Pena could bring that fight through doggedness or maybe good footwork and just slow. And here's the other weak point of Harrison: a little bit robotic, a little bit clear. Her game plan is clear as day, and her arsenal, her repertoire is dynamic in the takedowns, but everything else is kind of rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. She doesn't have a big menu of offense. So if once Pena feels and sees those options and gets a read on them, it could be a long night of work.
What's your gut saying for this one?
My gut is saying and still.
Ooh.
Just yeah, and this is not against Kayla at all. I just think there's so many ifs against Kayla. There's more ifs against Kayla than there is against Pena. It's like, okay, what's the path to victory for Kayla? Put her down and stay on top of her. Well, okay. What's the path of victory for Pena? Bust her up, make her tired. That's multiple options now. So, and the one part of the game that's not talked about, and I know Pena doesn't have like a noted kicking game, but like Harrison has no kicks, zero kicking. So there's another part. So when you look at like pathways to victory, there's more slots available for Pena. And I just want to say this: the odds for is crazy. That's like, I understand the bookies got to do what they got to do, but that's got to be a little disrespectful, man. I don't never seen a champion come up on those kind of numbers.
I think the largest one they ever had, technically because the fight never happened, but I think Shevchenko was minus 800 for the Nico Montano fight.
Okay, that's fair. Nico Montana is kind of one of those fun stories and asterisk champions. Full respect.
Actually, if you go go onto YouTube and you type Nico Montano into the search bar, our retrospective on her is the top choice.
Nice, good job, dude.
So there you go, a little tick in our box for that one. I think Kayla is a bit more of a finishing threat than you believe, because the other big thing you've got to bear in mind as well, being in the UFC, she now has elbows in a way she didn't do when she was in the PFL. So I think that's another way for her to finish. And yeah, I know the competition wasn't the best, but when she had that match in Invicta, she was able to use the elbows, and she just completely smashed through Courtney King's face. I mean, there's this shot of like Kayla looking over her opponent and then walking away and almost grimacing. It's like, oh god, did I just do that? So I think Kayla does have a finishing threat, especially now that she's in the UFC. I'm going to say second round ground and pound. I think Kayla is able to get this done. But for the sake of a fight, and for the sake of answering some questions regarding Kayla, I would like to see her go into the championship rounds.
I see what you're saying, and honestly, I know I'm in the minority, and I know Harrison's a big threat, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if she wins. I don't think it's absurd to think she wins. Actually, there's a part of me that thinks she does. And I see what you're saying, dude.
So now we're going to move on to our main event, and the bantamweight title is on the line. Merab Dvalishvili makes his second title defense, and he will be taking on a familiar foe in the form of Sean O'Malley. So the bookmakers' odds for this one is a minus 325 favourite for Merab. You can get O'Malley at plus 260. And when it comes to the INC poll, 86% of people are picking Merab to win this one. And I also had a look back and I looked at what the public thought going into the first fight. So 86% of people picking Merab this time, only 34% did when they first fought back in September. So a big swing, a big turnaround in how people think this fight's going to go.
Everybody loves a winner, Everybody loves a winner. I've seen so many switches of the polls with people and changing directions. I'm gonna be honest. I was on Team Merab for the first rodeo. Um, because, well, something you said way earlier, man, to the classic matchup, grappler versus striker. I know it's not as simple to just bottle them up like that's in the modern era, but on the baseline, that's what it is. And majority of the time, it goes to the grappler. I don't see this changing anything at all this time around. What has happened in the meantime between those two fights? What did Merab do? Gain a shitload of confidence. The guy that everybody was looking, they were overreacting to his facial reaction when they were telling, "Oh, fight Umar, right? Or fight Nurmagomedov. We're gonna make a big deal out of him. He's scared. He's scared." Handled him easily. That's a lot of confidence, man. You don't think Merab's feeling like king of the world right now? Of course he is. Gotta be. What is the meantime? What is Sean doing? Getting his hip repaired. God bless him. I hope it's all good. But those are two very, 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 very different things. Like taking on the most hardest challenge in the division or getting your hip fixed. Also a hard challenge, but still not the same. And just to a sports part, right? How many people go get their hip fixed and immediately come back to that exact spot of athletic awesomeness, like just right away? That's almost never happens. Last but not least, that spot on the mountain. You don't get to have a surgery and rarely get to have a surgery and come right back to your spot on the mountain. That's a big, 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 big challenge.
I always think about what happened to Ben Askren physically when he had his hip replaced.
Huge. And once again, I don't know the exact procedure, but still, that's your hip, right?
I'm fascinated about O'Malley's sort of mental attitude going into this, because I can't get a read over whether he's more mentally prepared for this one or less, because obviously he's now a family man these days. He seems a lot more relaxed. Dare I say, I think he comes across a lot more likable on social media than he once did. But at the same time, you read these stories about what Tim Welch has been saying when he was suggesting that the lights of the sphere was distracting O'Malley and that's part of the reason why he lost. That does feel like a little element to cope on, in my opinion. So I'm not too sure if we're going to see a more composed, more relaxed O'Malley, or one that's, still a little bit bothered that still can't really accept that he lost, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to fault Tim. It's your best boy. It's your boy. You're going to defend him to the death. You're going to say what you want to say to try to, get the shame off of him or whatever. But a couple things, right? He said, Sean said that this is not the sugar show, right? He's not doing the sugar show. He stopped smoking weed for this one and other things in his lifestyle. He's honed in and focused. So some people would look at that and go, hey, man, he's more focused. He's more dedicated. He's locked in. I'm kind of one on the other side of like, run what you brung. Bro, you became champion being you. Just changing up all this stuff, then bringing in DJ, Demetrius Johnson, for advice, for training in this camp, for whatever. You didn't win the title with DJ's help, right? So it's tricky. It's I think once again, this kind of puts more questions. There's far more questions on Sean's side. It's not healthy ones either, in the sense of, what is it going to be like? What is he going to do? Now he's changing this up. Now he's changing that up. Is he in an 8-month gap with recovering from surgery? You think he really brought the wrestling gap? He closed the wrestling gap that much? I don't.
So I'm going to make the assumption that you watched the first fight between the two in researching some of the notes for this. Were there any sort of takeaways you had from that first fight? Was there anything that you sort of identified as a Sean flaw and thought, yeah, that's something that I need to work on, or there's maybe a gap in Merab's game that I'm going to exploit? What did you make of the first fight?
I felt like genuinely Merab's attack was just far too much for Sean. Sean didn't have any real answer or way to hurt him. He was banking on, hitting him with the 2-piece and rocking him, but it wasn't just going to happen. It was crazy to just see. He was almost hopeless. He had no pathway to victory in that fight. He was not damaging Merab at all, and Merab literally took his time round by round and just scored it up. I don't see a formula for Sean. I just don't. It seems crazy to me that they would even rush this match, maybe because it sells, but I just don't see competitively where is his answer going to come from suddenly to deal with this threat.
I think Sean is capable of getting that big knockout punch. There are some attributes to Merab's game which I think maybe are concerns. I don't think he's the fastest starter. If you look at some of the times he's been in trouble, it has happened in the first round. I think about what happened against Marlon Moraes, who was like a proper big power hitter early in the match. Like he can crack anybody on his day, like prime Marlon. And he was able to do that against Merab, but Moraes gassed himself out. Merab having, again, this is another thing that a lot of people forget when it comes to cardio-based fighters, is people think about their ability to keep a pace throughout 25 minutes, but it also means that they can recover very quickly when they're rocked. Frankie Edgar's a guy who I can think of who's very similar in that regard, and Merab was able to do that. He survived the onslaught and then managed to get himself the win. So that's a concern, and I was also a little bit... I erred on the side of the caution when it came to how Merab handled the body shots near the end of the fifth round. Because O'Malley did sort of hurt him, and you could see Merab kind of wince, and I think that's something that I think O'Malley's going to do a lot in this fight. I think he's going to try and attack the body very frequently.
Okay, you have a good point there, but every time Sean kicks, if he tries to kick, you're just inviting getting taken down. If you're close enough to throw hands to the body, well, you're also too close, and you're probably going to get taken down. So those weapons are dual-sided. It's a two-sided sword for that stuff. In that form. Now, I think you're hella right. By the way, good job on that beginning of the fight. Merab is slower and is vulnerable. Problem is Sean is a counter fighter. He doesn't press. He doesn't jump out of the gate try to get you, right? So what is he going to change all of that's? Look how many things we're going to have to ask Sean to change to be successful here versus what does Merab have to change to be successful? Just be Merab, right? So Sean, 5 things we just listed that he's going to have to do or do better. Merab, just keep being you, buddy. That's, to me, that's how this fight is playing out.
Not too much Merab, because bearing in mind some of the stuff Merab gets up to in his spare time, like jumping into frozen lakes. Maybe do with that. Away with that.
Yeah. Or you know, what's up with him getting like some kind of goofy injury or bad injuries like slightly before, like now brought his toes in question? Like, yeah, Merab, slightly less Merab, but just the right amount. Definitely, he's probably, good call, dude. He's probably his own worst enemy. Sean's biggest asset in this fight is Merab to go full Merab and do something silly and goof up the fight, hurt himself in some way. But yeah.
And there is maybe a tendency as well for Merab to showboat a little bit as well.
I don't know if he's going to be that comfortable this time doing that. Just because the punching, right? Sean could put him out. I think, you know, definitely the showboating thing helps, but man, if you dump somebody on their butt, they're sitting there against the cage and you're standing up freely. That's a free taunt. You got to hit the emoji taunt on that one for sure. But I don't doubt him but yeah, he could, right? He could have a switch off, have a mental lapse and shit the bed, you know, if he goose off too much. It's a championship fight. Let's not underplay that. This is for all the marbles. So yeah, good call.
I kind of feel as well, like, obviously there's a big talking point recently in regards to fighters in the UFC getting dubious rematches. You could have O'Malley versus Merab in there. We had Strickland versus DDP earlier this year. There's rumours that they're going to do Volk versus Yair. I think a drawback about running this fight back so quickly, and I know why they've done it. They have big hopes. They see you, O'Malley, as the big mainstream star. They want to try and capitalise on that. But the problem they have is it's kind of all or nothing with the UFC. Because we could have a situation where, let's say Merab wins this fight. Sean O'Malley's going to go 0-2 against the champion. He's not going to get another bantamweight title fight for a long, long time if he was to lose this fight. So they kind of put all their eggs in one basket, and it's something that I think the UFC are going very short-sighted with a lot of their decision-making, and I think O'Malley could be a victim of this if he was to lose.
Well, I agree. The modern TKO management they've turned into the boxing formula. Just sell what was the hottest thing right now. Who gives a shit about 6 months from now or next year? Right now. So yes, I'm picking up what you're saying there. Now, on the other hand, Sean had to have wanted this fight too.
Mhm.
So, lay it on the athlete a little bit as well. And if we maybe if we play, suit and tie executive mode for a second, Merab sells. Merab's got he's got the internet fan base, he's got national support, he's got international support. Like people just, they just skip his last name. He's a one name. He's a mononym. You know how popular you have to be to become a mononym? Like that's real. Now I know they put a lot of effort and concerted placement of Sean along the way. People like to say the Dana White treatment, right? But he's also a sellable quantity. And if Sean was to falter here, all this does is solidify Merab's awesomeness, and they got something to sell. It's not going to kill O'Malley's recognition. He's, to the casuals, I've heard so many people go, like, they don't really watch UFC, but they're like, yeah, I kind of know. I mean, and I go, oh, who do you know? And like, I don't know his name, but the guy with the colored hair and the tattoos, right? So he has his own image, and I don't really know if it's a bad thing for the UFC, really, because either one has their fan bases at the top. If whoever loses here, they both guys have fan bases. It's going to sell the next championship fight, no matter who has the belt, given whoever wins this scenario. Let's just go even more dark theory on boxing theology that the UFC has been using. Sean wins. Oh baby, we got ourselves a trilogy, like the moneymaker of all combat sports. So yeah, it is a little rugged and kind of short-sighted. I see what you're saying there, but at the same time, it's also, let's cash checks while these people can make them happen.
And it could, if Merab was to win as well. And we're kind of seeing some of the drawbacks that I think Pantoja is in the same kind of bracket in this, where if you deny a sort of like deserved number one a title match, when they actually do get the belt, it leaves them with very few fresh options for title defenses, because Merab beat, 11, 12 people to get the title fight with O'Malley. He won that one. And we could be in a situation where he's having to fight Piotr Jan again, or he's having to fight Umar again, because we could be going through a lot of rematches if Merab was to win this one.
This lands back to what we talked about earlier, my man. The broken ranking system. This is not on the athlete's fault. This goes back to the completely shattered, broken ranking system that's keeping these individuals too close together and not freeing up space for new blood. I don't have an answer.
So what I do want to know an answer about, though, is our final question. Who is going to win this fight and how?
I think I spilt the beans. I tipped my hat, whatever the expression is. There's too many what ifs. There's too many, you got to do this. There's too many, it would be, could be on Sean's side. It seems like as long as Merab doesn't over Merab himself, he's in a very safe, secure, fairly clear pathway to victory. There's a lot to overcome for Mr. O'Malley.
I can see a scenario. I mean, there is a timeline out there where Sean O'Malley is able to catch Merab coming in. And I can also see a scenario as well where it's, I wouldn't say a close fight, where it goes to a decision. And bearing in mind how much the judges these days value any kind of striking over wrestling, I can also see a situation where O'Malley kind of steals a decision. That being said, I think you play it safe and you go with Merab decision again.
I'm with you on that. I think that's a fair way to go. I said it before, I said it again. To increase your wrestling, it would have been one thing if he was healthy and this whole time he was just gaming up with DJ. I would be really worried, honestly. But when you add surgery plus rehab plus then time to up your craft, I just don't see how 8 months is enough time to execute those things that I just said.
And on that cheery note, we are going to start winding things down here. The sun is fully set over here in northeast England, so I think it's sort of my cue as well to set this off. Rob, I just want to say a big thank you to join us on short notice. You've been a great contributor, and you've endeared yourself to a lot of people as well. Very pro Merab, pro Raquel Pennington. So you've sort of ticked a lot of boxes of the INC fan base.
Hey man, that's lucky. I'm glad that we see eye to eye on that. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it very much. I'm glad to be linking up with you. Let me just say this: as a day one hardcore lifelong fan, I want to shout out not just to you, but to the UK fans in general. I got a good number of friends. You folks remind me right now in this era. You guys remind me of me and the resistance back in the dark ages of what time is it? I don't care. What's going on? I don't care. Whatever it takes, I'm going to show up and be a good fan for the sport. Shout out to everybody in the European region for that, but definitely the UK fans, man, you guys show up in force, and it's actually really good to see.
And if people want to read any of your work, get in touch with you in any way, what's the best place to do that?
At JSpec the host, JSPEC the host on Instagram or X. I'm mainly on X. Some of my interviews and clips are available on Instagram. If you guys check out Millions at millions.co, I do interviews like literally tons every week of all kinds of fighters of all kinds of levels there as well. And hit me up. I'm available for all passionate, real fans of the sport. If you guys just want to dog and rip on stuff, I'm not your guy. But just like Cal here and the rest of you guys who are passionate and you put in love into the sport and just honest criticism, I get it. But if you put in love into the sport, hit me up. I'm all about it.
And just one more little bit of spring cleaning from my own part. We will be releasing our latest retro review. Mitchell has been working on this one. And for this one, we put a poll out on the channel where we asked people to vote for a classic event which was headlined by, in my opinion, the greatest female fighter of them all, Chris Cyborg. We gave people 4 classic Cyborg main events. Asked for people to vote for which one they wanted us to cover. 75% of the vote, and it will be live on Thursday. We will cover one of the biggest fights in women's MMA history. Strikeforce Carano versus Cyborg will be live on Thursday. We had a lot of fun making that one, and we hope that you enjoy it when the time is right. With that being said, we hope you've also enjoyed me and Joe talking about UFC, not Joe, sorry, force of habit there, Rob, sorry. Me and Rob have been talking about UFC 316. In the words of Stone Cold, we opened up a can of whoop ass on it.
Hell yeah.
And on that bombshell, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show, and we hope you enjoy UFC 316. Bye-bye for now, everyone.